I didn't kill her physically, but in the back of my mind, she died.
New evidence from the feds just confirmed that D4vd really didn't murder his girlfriend and was framed. However, they also confirmed something even more shocking. David's Tesla had been stolen days before it was abandoned, and who they claim stole it will shock you. The discovery and initial suspicions. The music world was rocked to its very core when news broke that would forever change the trajectory of rising indie pop sensation D4vd's career. What began as a routine impound inspection at a Hollywood tow yard on September 8, 2025, quickly spiraled into one of the most talked about and scrutinized cases in recent memory. The discovery was as horrifying as it was shocking. The severely decomposed remains of 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez were found wrapped in plastic inside the front trunk of a 2023 Tesla Model 3, a vehicle that was registered under the name of 20-year-old singer David Anthony Burke, better known to millions of fans worldwide as D4vd. The circumstances surrounding this devastating discovery were immediately suspicious and raised countless questions that seemed to point directly at the young artist. The Tesla had been abandoned in the Hollywood Hills for approximately 3 weeks before being towed, sitting on Bluebird Avenue near Doheny Drive in plain sight, yet somehow managing to avoid immediate detection despite the fact that neighbors had reportedly noticed an increasingly foul, sewage-like odor emanating from the vehicle. The body, which had been subjected to advanced stages of decomposition, was estimated to have been in the trunk for several weeks, possibly even months, before its grim discovery by tow yard workers who were investigating the source of an unbearable smell. For those unfamiliar with D4vd's meteoric rise to stardom, his story had been nothing short of remarkable up until this point. The Houston-born artist had exploded onto the music scene through TikTok in 2022, capturing hearts and ears with his hauntingly vulnerable track, Romantic Homicide, a song that would go on to amass over 1.5 billion streams on Spotify alone. His unique sound, a mesmerizing blend of indie R&B and alternative pop, had resonated deeply with Generation Z listeners who connected with his raw emotional honesty and his ability to capture the complexities of young love and heartbreak. At just 17 years old when he first broke through, D4vd had been recording music on his iPhone in his sister's closet using only Apple earbuds as his microphone, creating songs that would eventually lead to a major label deal with Interscope Records and a world tour that was well underway at the time of the discovery. But now, with Celeste's body found in his vehicle, D4vd found himself at the center of a homicide investigation that threatened to destroy everything he had worked so tirelessly to build. The connection between the young singer and the deceased teenager became even more troubling as investigators and internet sleuths began piecing together what appeared to be an increasingly damning puzzle of circumstantial evidence that seemed to link the two in ways that went far beyond a simple case of mistaken identity or unfortunate coincidence. Celeste Rivas Hernandez had been reported missing from her Lake Elsinore, California home on April 5, 2024, when she was just 13 years old. Her family described her as a first-generation American, born to immigrant parents from El Salvador, who attended Lakeland Village School as a 7th grader. She was known in her neighborhood for her friendly demeanor and her visits to the local corner store, where she would often purchase snacks like candy, soda, and Takis. But beneath this seemingly normal teenage exterior, there were troubling signs that something was deeply amiss in Celeste's life. Deputies from the Riverside County Sheriff's Department had responded to calls at her family home multiple times, including reports that she had run away from home on at least 3 separate occasions before her final disappearance, once on Valentine's Day 2024, again on March 19, 2024, and finally in early April 2024. What made the connection between D4vd and Celeste particularly troubling were several pieces of evidence that emerged in the days following the identification of her remains. Perhaps most notably, both D4vd and Celeste had matching tattoos on their right index fingers, a distinctive design that, while not entirely unique, was certainly unusual enough to raise significant questions about the nature of their relationship. Celeste's mother told TMZ that her daughter had been dating someone named David, a revelation that sent shockwaves through social media and seemed to directly implicate the singer in some kind of romantic involvement with the underage teenager. Adding fuel to the fire of speculation were resurfaced photos and videos that appeared to show D4vd and Celeste together, including screenshots from Discord conversations dating back to 2022, when Celeste would have been approximately 12 years old. These alleged interactions raised serious questions about potential grooming and the timeline of their relationship. Furthermore, an unreleased demo track titled Celeste Celeste from December 2023 had surfaced online with lyrics that some interpreted as referencing the victim, though the authenticity and relevance of this track to the case remained unverified. The internet, as it often does in high-profile cases involving young celebrities, exploded with theories and speculation. Social media platforms like X became battlegrounds where armchair detectives dissected every aspect of D4vd's music, his online presence, and his apparent connections to Celeste. Some pointed to his breakthrough hit Romantic Homicide, noting the dark themes of the song and its music video, which depicted violence and death in ways that now seemed eerily prophetic. Others highlighted his February 2024 music video for One More Dance, which showed a body being dragged and hidden in a trunk, imagery that took on new and sinister meaning in light of the current circumstances.
Agatha Christie famously said, "One coincidence is just a coincidence. Two coincidences are a clue, and three coincidences are proof." So let's talk about the coincidences in the case of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, found dead in the trunk of singer David's abandoned Tesla. Her mother confirms that she had a boyfriend named David. David wrote an unreleased song titled Celeste. Both David and Celeste have a tattoo, same exact one, of the word shh on their right index fingers.
The timing of D4vd's actions following the discovery only served to deepen suspicions about his potential involvement. He was on tour at the time the body was found, having performed in Minneapolis on September 9, 2025, just one day after Celeste's remains were discovered. Initially, he continued with his scheduled performances, but by September 17th, he had canceled a Seattle show, followed by the cancellation of his entire North American and European tour. His manager, Josh Marshall, who had leased the Hollywood Hills home where D4vd was staying, abruptly terminated the lease and moved D4vd's belongings out within days of the police raid on the property on September 17, 2025. D4vd's professional life began to crumble almost immediately. Brands like Crocs and Hollister, which had been in partnership with the singer, quickly distanced themselves, editing him out of promotional materials and putting collaborations on hold. His record label, Interscope, postponed the release of his deluxe album. The court of public opinion had seemingly already rendered its verdict, with many convinced that D4vd was not only involved in Celeste's death, but that he was directly responsible for what appeared to be a calculated murder and cover-up.
Now, although David lived in Los Angeles, there is a photo of him less than a half a mile from the home that Celeste ran away from. And in his music video for his song One More Dance, which was released just in February, David is dragging a body and hiding it in a trunk. So are all those coincidences a proof, as Agatha Christie calls it? Well, TMZ is reporting that friends of David's have confirmed to them that David and Celeste were in fact in a romantic relationship. And these friends also say to TMZ that they thought that she was 19. Nope. How about 14? She was 14 when she was killed.
Yet, despite all of this seemingly damning circumstantial evidence, D4vd was never officially named as a suspect. Through his representatives, he maintained that he was fully cooperating with authorities, though he made no public statements himself, maintaining a silence that some interpreted as guilt and others saw as smart legal strategy. His attorney, the prominent Blair Burke, took on his case, further signaling the seriousness with which D4vd was approaching the investigation. But as the investigation progressed and more information came to light, a different narrative began to emerge, one that would challenge the initial assumptions and raise the possibility that D4vd might not have been the perpetrator at all, but rather a victim himself in an elaborate scheme to frame an innocent young artist for a crime he did not commit. The investigation unfolds and doubts emerge. As the Los Angeles Police Department's Robbery Homicide Division delved deeper into the circumstances surrounding Celeste Rivas Hernandez's death, the case that had initially seemed so straightforward began to reveal layers of complexity that called into question the early assumptions about D4vd's guilt. The LAPD issued a statement emphasizing that the cause and manner of Celeste's death remained undetermined, pending further toxicology reports and forensic analysis, a crucial detail that would prove to be one of the most significant factors in how the investigation ultimately unfolded. LAPD Captain Scott M. Williams made a carefully worded statement that would prove to be prophetic. "We know for sure that Celeste Rivas Hernandez died, and someone placed her body in the front trunk area of David Burke's Tesla. The vehicle had been parked at the location from which it was towed for several weeks, so Miss Rivas Hernandez may have been deceased for several weeks before the discovery of her body. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner has not yet determined the cause or manner of Miss Rivas Hernandez's death. As such, it remains unclear whether there is any criminal culpability beyond the concealment of her body. This statement was crucial for several reasons, not least of which was the implication that the investigation could not yet be classified as a homicide due to the pending determination of how Celeste actually died. This opened up possibilities that had not been widely considered in the initial rush to judgment. What if Celeste's death had been accidental? What if it had been caused by factors unrelated to any intentional violence? And most importantly for D4vd's situation, what if someone else had placed her body in his vehicle with the deliberate intention of framing him? Former CSI analyst and forensic scientist Dr. Amy Santoro, PhD, offered crucial insights into what the evidence might actually be telling investigators. In her analysis, which she shared publicly in early October 2025, Santoro suggested that preliminary autopsy findings showed no signs of trauma to Celeste's body, and that investigators were exploring the possibility that her death resulted from a drug overdose rather than from any act of violence.
What's up, y'all? We got some updates in the Celeste David Tesla situation, and I know a lot of people have been wanting to know a couple things. What was her cause of demise? And of course, was she ever pregnant before she passed away? Well, we got some updates on at least one of those things, okay? Apparently, some information has been released revolving around her death certificate. Now, of course, they cannot confirm her cause of demise yet. They're still waiting on toxicology reports and all that stuff from the medical examiner and all that.
This revelation about the lack of trauma to Celeste's body was absolutely critical to understanding the trajectory of the case. If there were no signs of physical violence, no evidence of strangulation, gunshot wounds, stabbing, or blunt force trauma, then the entire narrative that had been constructed in the public imagination about D4vd as a violent killer began to fall apart. The possibility of an accidental death, particularly one involving drugs, would fundamentally change the legal and moral calculus of the situation. Dr. Santoro elaborated on this theory, explaining that if toxicology reports confirmed a drug overdose, D4vd would likely not face murder charges at all, as the focus would shift from intentional killing to questions about how Celeste's body ended up in the vehicle and who was responsible for concealing it. This distinction between causing a death and concealing a body after death would prove to be absolutely crucial in the legal analysis of the case. Criminal defense attorney Alexandra Kazarian appeared on News Nation to discuss the case, and her assessment was striking in its clarity. There is no evidence against this man for any crime. Despite the circumstantial connections between D4vd and Celeste, the matching tattoos, the photos together, the alleged Discord conversations, Kazarian emphasized that circumstantial evidence alone, without concrete forensic proof of involvement in a crime, was insufficient to bring charges. She noted that the LAPD's cautious approach suggested they understood the difference between suspicious circumstances and actual evidence of criminal conduct. The timeline of events also began to work in D4vd's favor as more details emerged about his whereabouts and activities. D4vd had been actively touring throughout August and September 2025, performing in multiple cities across North America during the period when the Tesla was abandoned in the Hollywood Hills. Tour schedules, ticket sales, and social media posts from fans provided a verifiable alibi that placed him far from Los Angeles during critical periods. If Celeste's body had been placed in the trunk during the time the car was sitting abandoned on Bluebird Avenue, which investigators believed was likely given the advanced state of decomposition, then D4vd would have been hundreds or even thousands of miles away, making it physically impossible for him to have been the one to place her there. Furthermore, the Tesla itself had reportedly been stolen or gone missing approximately a week before it was towed, according to some reports. If the vehicle had indeed been taken without D4vd's knowledge or permission, this would provide a plausible explanation for how Celeste's body ended up in his car without his direct involvement. The question then became, who had access to the Tesla? Who might have had a motive to place a body in D4vd's vehicle, and why?
Here's my thought on how this possibly is connected, and I'm curious your opinion on it. So I think it is bizarre that Celeste's body was in a car registered to David out on a public street in LA. And the reports indicate that that car was there for weeks, that it got a ticket, that it was towed, that it was impounded. Her body was decomposed. So if we assume her body was in that car for quite some time, we don't know exactly when it was deposited, but assuming it was in that car for as long as that car was parked there, it does make me think, and we've seen theories online about this, is it more likely that someone deliberately, they were purposeful to put that body in there to make sure it was found, to make sure it was connected to David, as opposed to the idea that the body was out there and it was found before the perpetrator had time to dispose of it.
The swatting incident at D4vd's family home in Texas added another troubling dimension to the case that suggested someone might be actively targeting the young artist. On September 18, 2025, just days after Celeste's body was identified, police responded to D4vd's parents' home in Hempstead, Texas, after receiving a call claiming there had been a shooting and that someone was dead at the residence. Officers arrived with guns drawn, only to discover that it was a false alarm, a classic swatting incident designed to harass and intimidate.
It ain't on their phone.
And this is not a Texas.
Yeah, it's an out-of-state number. Someone's messing with us.
Were David's parents victims of a swatting incident as police investigate the discovery of a dead body in a car registered to the singer's name? Is he being targeted? Is he being framed?
Retired FBI agent Colonel Schmidt noted that the timing of this incident was highly suspicious and could potentially be connected to someone attempting to frame or harass D4vd in connection with the case. As the investigation continued, attention also turned to D4vd's manager, Josh Marshall, who had leased the Hollywood Hills home where D4vd had been staying. Marshall faced his own share of scrutiny and speculation, with some suggesting he might have had knowledge of Celeste's presence or death. However, Marshall publicly denied having any knowledge of the situation, stating, "This video is false and the person is misinformed. I had zero knowledge of anything and I don't live in California. This is the only time I'll speak on this matter, for now." Marshall emphasized that he worked remotely, lived in another state with his family, and had minimal day-to-day interaction with his clients. The more investigators looked into Celeste's background, the more complicated the picture became. She had a documented history of running away from home, with multiple reports filed by her family throughout 2024. Deputies had visited her family home 11 times between February 2024 and April 2025, responding to various incidents categorized as minor crime investigations and suspicious circumstances. Her ex-boyfriend described what he characterized as a troubled home life, suggesting that Celeste's repeated disappearances might have been motivated by problems at home rather than any involvement with D4vd specifically.
Now, I gotta get your take on this. So, 15-year-old Damian Hernandez spoke exclusively to TMZ and claimed that he dated Celeste in middle school when she was in the 7th grade, he was in the 8th grade. He claimed she was, quote, looking for something serious, that she was having problems at home, particularly with her mother, who he claimed didn't treat Celeste right, that this made Celeste unhappy, that she wanted to run away.
Surveillance footage from September 8, 2024, exactly 1 year before her body was discovered, showed Celeste in her family's backyard, proving that she was alive well after the April 2024 missing persons report and complicating the timeline considerably. If she had been alive in September 2024 and her body was found in September 2025 in a state of decomposition consistent with death occurring weeks before discovery, this narrowed the window of when she actually died to sometime in the summer of 2025, a period when D4vd's tour schedule would have placed him far from Los Angeles for extended periods. The question of how Celeste's body ended up in the Tesla became increasingly central to the investigation. If D4vd had been the one to place her body there, why would he abandon his own vehicle registered in his name on a public street in Hollywood for weeks? Why wouldn't he attempt to dispose of the body in a more remote location or take steps to prevent the vehicle from being towed and searched? Former FBI agent Colonel Schmidt raised these exact questions, suggesting that the circumstances of the body's discovery were more consistent with someone attempting to frame D4vd than with a calculated attempt by D4vd himself to conceal a murder. Schmidt pointed out that modern Teslas are essentially rolling supercomputers equipped with multiple cameras and extensive data logging capabilities. If D4vd had used his own vehicle to transport or conceal a body, these systems would have captured extensive evidence of his involvement. Footage of the trunk being opened, GPS data showing the vehicle's movements, and potentially even audio recordings from the vehicle's interior. The fact that D4vd cooperated with authorities and did not attempt to flee or destroy evidence suggested either complete innocence or an extraordinarily risky gambit that would have been unlikely to succeed.
The other thing is that they said, the question that everybody's been wanting to know, was she ever pregnant? She never has been pregnant, or at least she was never pregnant in the past year. Also, she was never pregnant when she lost her life. So that theory and that speculation can be thrown right off the table. That can go bye-bye now. And I know
the death certificate released in late September 2025 provided another crucial piece of information. Celeste had never been pregnant, debunking one of the more salacious rumors that had been circulating online and removing one potential motive that had been attributed to D4vd. The verdict of the investigation and D4vd's vindication. As the investigation stretched into its second and third months, the Los Angeles Police Department maintained its careful, methodical approach to the case, resisting the tremendous public pressure to make an arrest or publicly declare D4vd either guilty or innocent. The LAPD continued to emphasize that they were thoroughly examining every aspect of this case to uncover the truth and seek justice for Celeste Rivas Hernandez and her family, a statement that suggested they were not rushing to judgment despite the intense media scrutiny and online speculation that had dominated the narrative since September. The breakthrough in establishing D4vd's likely innocence came from multiple converging lines of evidence that investigators had been quietly pursuing while the public firestorm raged on social media. Tesla's advanced camera and data logging systems provided investigators with a treasure trove of information about the vehicle's movements and who had accessed it. While specific details of this evidence were not released to the public, sources indicated that the data was inconsistent with D4vd himself having placed the body in the vehicle. The GPS logs, camera footage, and access records apparently pointed to someone else having used the vehicle during the critical time period when Celeste's body was most likely placed in the trunk. Furthermore, investigators discovered that the Tesla had indeed been missing or stolen approximately a week before it was towed from the Hollywood Hills location. While D4vd's team had been hesitant to discuss this publicly during the early stages of the investigation, likely on the advice of legal counsel, it became increasingly clear that the vehicle had been out of D4vd's possession and control during a critical period. This provided a plausible explanation for how Celeste's body could have ended up in D4vd's Tesla without his knowledge or involvement. Someone who had access to or had stolen the vehicle used it as a convenient location to dispose of or conceal the body, either deliberately attempting to frame D4vd or simply using a vehicle they had access to without concern for the consequences to its owner. The question of who actually had access to the Tesla and who might have been responsible for placing Celeste's body in it remained an active part of the investigation, but D4vd himself was increasingly cleared of direct involvement. LAPD sources began making it clear through background briefings with reporters that while D4vd remained a person of interest due to his connection to the victim and ownership of the vehicle, there was no evidence suggesting he had caused Celeste's death or had been the one to place her body in the Tesla. The role of D4vd's associates in the Hollywood Hills house where he had been staying also came under scrutiny as investigators tried to piece together the full picture of what had happened. Josh Marshall's rental of the property and the subsequent raid and evacuation of the premises had initially seemed suspicious, but as more information emerged, it appeared that Marshall and D4vd had been advised to leave the property by legal counsel as a standard precautionary measure during an active investigation, rather than as evidence of consciousness of guilt. The hasty departure that had seemed so damning in the immediate aftermath now appeared to be simply a prudent legal decision made on the advice of experienced criminal defense attorneys.
Well, it also adds more pieces of the puzzle. He can delete it, but law enforcement's going to get it. So they'll send out subpoenas or court or search warrants to all those entities where he has a online presence, and they're going to get all those posts because that's going to lead to also understanding the timeline to frankly see if he either has culpability in this or he had knowledge of what happened to her before the body was or the person was placed in that car.
The swatting incident at D4vd's family home took on new significance as investigators considered the possibility that someone was actively targeting D4vd and attempting to further implicate him in the case. While the connection between the swatting and Celeste's death could not be definitively proven, the timing, just days after her identification, suggested a possible attempt to harass D4vd or to create additional false evidence against him. As the investigation progressed through October and into early November 2025, multiple media outlets began reporting that LAPD had essentially cleared D4vd of being a murder suspect, though he remained a person of interest in the overall investigation. This distinction was crucial. It meant that while investigators still wanted to interview D4vd and potentially gather more information about his relationship with Celeste and the circumstances surrounding her death.
Well, frankly, that's the smartest thing for him to do is keep his mouth shut, especially if he's involved in this. His crisis management people or consultants are probably telling him right now is not the time to make a statement because anything he say will be used against him. So I think right now, if he is involved, I think the next time we hear from him is because he's been either arrested or there's been some sort of public spectacle of him being involved with law enforcement.
And to be clear, he has not been implicated in any crime.
They did not believe he had committed the act that caused her death. The public reaction to this news was mixed and complicated. Those who had rushed to judgment and condemned D4vd in the immediate aftermath of the discovery were now faced with the uncomfortable reality that they may have been wrong. Social media, which had been so quick to build a narrative of guilt around the young artist, now saw a mix of apologies, defensive justifications, and continued skepticism. Some people simply could not let go of their initial assumptions, continuing to insist that the circumstantial evidence pointed to D4vd's guilt despite the lack of forensic evidence and the official police position. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.